In this lesson, we'll take some familiar turnarounds and I'll show you how to use them in any key on the guitar. Let's get to it. Hey, John here with your Tuesday Blues, where each week you'll learn how to play better blues just like today. In this lesson, we're going to really get to work with some of the basic turnarounds, but I'll show you how to leverage them into any key on the guitar. First, let's take a quick look at one of the most iconic blues turnarounds in E. Now this works great in E because it fits nicely and we land nicely into this E major chord, the end of the first part, and then the second measure we make that big statement with the B7. That's a dominant 5 chord. And there's so many variations on this classic sounding turnaround, and if you need to get this or one like it under your fingers, check out Tuesday Blues 34. But what we're going to do right now is take a step away from the individual notes and really take a look at the structure of this basic turnaround. The chord we start with in the example is really an E7. Right? We don't have a root going right here, not in these 3 strings right here, but what we're going to do is take this E7 shape and we're going to move down chromatically 1 fret at a time. So we're going to do that 3 times before resolving to this E major. These are the 3 notes for E major. All right, and chromatic just means 1 fret at a time, really 1/2 step, or a semitone in musical terms, depending on which lane you choose there to call this out. But we're just taking this and moving down a 1/2 step. Really, each note on the 3rd string and each note on the 2nd string, if you watch these move chromatically. Now the 1st string, we just kind of drag it along, and when we get here, we kind of break from that chromatic movement and we move down to the open 1st string. Now the 2nd measure, we climb up to the 5 chord. In this case, it's a B7, dominant 7th, has a strong pull back to the root. That's what makes this really work well as a turnaround. All right, so now we're going to take this structure, this descending chromatic line in the 1st measure, and this walk up to the 5 in the 2nd measure, and we're going to make it movable so that we can play this in any key. But first, let's make this dead simple by focusing just on the top 3 strings. That's where a lot of the action is happening anyway. So first up, you got to know where you are starting. So let's take a look at this E7. We don't have our root here, right? So this might not be a good sort of target to keep in mind, but we know we're resolving to this E, and that's home. That's our 1 chord in the key of E. So we're going to start with kind of that middle ground, if you will, in mind. So here's our root, open 1st string, and look at what we're doing. We've just got 1, then open, open. And we can move this really anywhere. Let's go, let's do it right here. All right, so if we come up here and pick this note, that's a C sharp. So this is now our key center. This is our root. Kind of the same note in position as here. We're just playing it a little bit differently and moving it all the way up to C sharp. And this is just for demonstration purposes. It could be any key, but just want you to see that you can move it to something completely random, really. So we're starting with this is kind of the target. So what we need to do is walk our chromatic line down into this. So we'll start 3 frets higher and then do the same travel that we did before. All right, so once again, we're up from here, just move up 3 frets on that 3rd string, take that shape that we used here, bring it all the way with you. Pick it out or do whatever you like there, but you're moving that turnaround, that structure, that sort of melodic contour right along with the changing key. now C sharp, just in this example. Now we got that chromatic walk up that we want to do. And if you really think about it, you could get away with just strumming across this little B7, or not B7, but the dominant 7 of our key here. We could strum across these 3 strings, all right? And just to kind of get some fingers out of the way, show you what I'm doing. 3rd string, 2nd string, 1st string. It's a little dominant 7 chord shape. Just 3 notes from the chord here, but it really gives you that sound, especially when you move to that chord, that 1 chord, that key center. So what you could do is play a simple version of that classic turnaround now in C sharp. And we've kind of checked all the boxes. We've got our chromatic, move down on the 3rd string into our 1 chord, and then we emphasize the 5 chord in the 2nd measure. All right, so that's a simplified approach, but we can also bring in full chords so that it really sounds a little more full, quite like that one in E does, which is nice and comfy if you know at least an E chord and a B7 chord. But let's continue with our example. We'll start here, so that's cool. But when we get here, if we throw in a C sharp major, just a big bar chord, you're going to get the same place, okay? So what we did here was this, but if you turn that into a bar chord and move it all the way up here to C sharp, you can hit that big 6-string rooted bar chord. Then we can walk into our dominant 7 chord, and this is really nice. We're just walking into, much like this, from 2 frets, or the open, to 1 to 2 in the context of B7. We can do that here. We just need to start at the 9th fret, so right under our bar from the 1 chord, and then hit our dominant 7 chord, okay? So we're doing that with a slightly different shape, okay? And it's really a C7 shape. Come all the way up here to the 11th fret, and that is the dominant 7 chord, the 5 chord of our C sharp key here. Now you could alternatively, if you want some higher tones in that, walk up and bar across the top 3 strings and get that nice sound. All right. So you can see you've got some options on the chords, and different options work in different scenarios, but you can really hear the same idea just moved up, and in this case way up to C sharp here. All right, now what we're going to do is take a tour through a modification of that turnaround, but it's a little more challenging. So be sure to nail the first one, and if you're looking for something to kind of grow into, then maybe tackle this one. But I'll show you a couple things that make it a little bit easier to handle. But this one will sound really familiar to you. Very close to the first one that we covered, but we've got this open 1st string as kind of a pedal. Instead of dragging a note down chromatically, for the most part on that 1st string, we're going to replace that with the open 1st string. So that's our key center, our tonic, our root note, just droning, pedaling over everything that's happening. Now if we're going to move this up to, say, C sharp like we did in the last example, we're going to have some problems because it's really pretty difficult to stretch all that way. Maybe you can do it, and if so, great, but here's a workaround that will work just fine for you and makes this movable and makes it really work in any key. All right, keep in mind this is not quite as easy to wrap your hands around as the first example, but I wanted to show it to you, and let's dive into how I'm kind of making this work for me. I'm sliding up with that same sort of idea of having, this little shape. being dragged along chromatically, but I need to use a note on the second string. All right, and it's actually right here, kind of underneath. This is the 14th fret, right here underneath my ring finger. That's the same pitch as if we were to work this like that with that uncomfortable and really strange stretch. But what we can do is hold that note, and there's a bunch of fingers crammed right here, but it's gonna get better, because then what I want to do is hold that second string as long as possible, and then back these two fingers down and do it again. Okay? From here it gets a lot easier. You can change your shape into this, which is pretty comfortable, and then land in that little triad version of your one chord before continuing business as usual. So once again, this turnaround kind of reconfigured to play it anywhere looks like this. Now let's have a look at an equally classic sounding turnaround in A that we can move around. All right, check out Tuesday Blues number 17 to learn how to play that, or a variation of it, to get up to speed with the picking involved in that turnaround. But now let's check out the structure of this one. We pedal that root note on the first string. All right, so think first string, root note, and we'll walk down chromatically, this time on just the fourth string, okay? And we're gonna punctuate the second measure with our 5 chord, which in this case is E. All right, now let's move this into our example key once again, and we'll focus on just the partial chords to start simple, and then we'll come back and fill in the gaps with some full chords. Now I'm hoping that for someone that's a little less familiar with playing chords all over the place, that these little stripped down versions will help you get this turnaround under your fingers so that you can start using it and start having fun with it. All right, let's cover this in C sharp. Okay, so what we're going to do is start with the C sharp here and then do that walk down. All right, so nothing really amazing there. If you can do this in this position, you can do that here. Just move it up. Here's the root note. That's what you got to know so that you know where you're going. All right. All right, from here, what we want to do is move into our 5 chord, and we're going to play just these 3 strings. All right, strings 4, 3, and 2 for a little stripped down version of what's really coming from this big old 7th chord. Okay, but we can do that right here before landing into our 1 chord to resolve, which is just right here. You can play the bar chord. That one's pretty easy as far as our full chords go, but that's really where this is going. All right, so once again, slowly. All right, and now filling in with the big bar chords at the end. To play these in any key, just change your starting point. Change that target like we changed this to this, or like we changed this to this. Then you can make these turnarounds as elaborate or as stripped down as you like, or as you're capable of doing, whatever suits your taste, but these examples should get you started. If you've enjoyed this lesson, click or tap over here to sign up for 3 free lessons from my course, the Acoustic Blues Jumpstart, and to keep learning, click or tap right here, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Until then, practice smart and play on.